Hey, everybody, and welcome to Lost in the Groove. Today, we have a special interview with an author and a writer and someone that has an absolutely incredible career to share with us today. We have Mike. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on. It's good to be here.
It's a pleasure. So, let me ask you something. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Who is Mike?
Mike is a guy who thought he knew what his life was going to be like at 18
Smart.
and kept rewriting it for 15 years and then had a what I would consider like a personal tragedy that changed my life, and now I've been living like completely differently and very happily ever since.
Can I ask you what exactly was that tragedy?
Yeah, sure. So I had a child, my son Tyler, with my wife at the time, and when he was one, we moved to Arizona, and when he was one and a half, we got a divorce, and when he was two, I let her take him on a vacation to Thailand, which is where she grew up, but she's got dual citizenship, and
Okay.
she never returned, and I was not able to, with the State Department or law firms' help, get any traction in joint custody or anything like that. So he lives in Thailand now. He's 7.
I'm sorry. It
You
really
know,
it
as
really sucks. It really sucks because I have quite a few friends that are parents that they've had similar situations where they don't have their kids, and it's more than a tragedy. It's like it's it's like your kid.
yeah, yeah, but it
Uh,
it did spark a change in me, like I said. So I always look at things, with as much
right.
subjectivity and objectivity at once at the same time.
So what exactly did you change for yourself? Like, what did you take out of that experience?
That like for me, that was a moment in my life where I had a realization and then a lot of like questions around it. And the thing was, I was like, why did such a terrible thing happen to a quote unquote good person? And I'm not like a
Right.
saint, but I certainly never did anything that would come even close to quote unquote deserving this. And then I had to really think like, does that mean there's no God? Does that mean there is a God? Does that mean there's karma? I just started exploring the bigger metaphysical questions, whereas before I'd only been concerned with the smaller ones, like what's the meaning of life? But what's the meaning of life
It's a
isn't the same as what's that?
it's a dangerous rabbit hole. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, I started doing some introspection and thinking and reading, and I'm now much happier because I'm really aware of like how to live my life for me, like to make sure that I'm not living in like fear of things and you know anger.
It's a really beautiful approach. I really tried to take this approach too because I had a tragedy in my life. My dad passed away a few years ago, and
I'm very sorry.
the truth is we ask ourselves that question. Like, me as a person, I think I've been kind to people. I think I've done the right things for myself. Why me out of all? And the thing that I've taken out of it more, you've explained it better than I could say it, is you make something out of it. You use it as a tool. You don't use it as a pity or a sorrow to drown yourself.
Yeah, and I think everyone has theirs is another thing I started noticing. And some people's come later, earlier, differently.
Right.
Um, yeah, and it comes down to like your reaction to things has a lot to do with it. And we were talking before we started recording, but I also tried ayahuasca as part of my you know coming to terms and questioning the universe,
Mm-hmm. It
and
does
that had a
that.
lot to do. Yeah. So
Let me ask you, what's been your experience with psychedelics up to this point? Like, what is your earliest experience with psychedelics?
so I grew up in the Bay Area of California, right outside Berkeley, California. So I started. Not that it's a psychedelic, but I started smoking weed when I was about 11 or 12 or 13. And then I think the first time I tried shrooms, I was 17 or 18. I don't remember. I think
Whoa.
18. Yeah, I
Damn.
think 18. I think I was 18. I think it was my first summer after graduation, and I didn't love it, but I also didn't hate it. It didn't like stick. And then in college, I did shrooms and acid a couple times each the first couple years, and then I did acid, I think a total of like maybe 8 or 10 times by the time I was like 25, and I have never done it since. I much prefer shrooms to acid.
Well, because I feel like, and I've talked about this before. I had somebody on this and explain this. Shrooms is a more natural experience. It's hard to explain, but you become very connected to nature. I urge anybody, if like you ever do shrooms, go out with a group to like just outside, have a
Yeah,
bonfire, like get marshmallows. Trust me, marshmallows are so fun. Um, but it's just a great environment to do it. You just connect really well um to what's like around you. I don't know. I feel like there's a thing about psychedelics. It's like there's a setting and a place. You got to create the setting and you got to create the place to do it.
totally. Yeah, that was that Timothy Leary's thing, set and setting, I think is what he called it.
Yeah, I mean if you look at like all of the like social experiments and all of the things that are done, the number one thing you always notice about all of it is perspective. That's the key. They're trying to understand your perspective. And like what does that even matter? Well, if you want to talk about perspective, think about MDMA. Like you want to talk about psychedelics, let's talk about MDMA for a second. MDMA, when you have somebody that deals with PTSD, let's say trauma, it has this interesting effect where the neurons in your brain, the cells that are sprouting out like spiders, like spider webs, to interact with different neural channels throughout your brain, they get flipped, like literally flipped around. And it's really bananas. Why? Well, what happens is you allow this neuron to have a new channel, a new place for it to interact in the brain. So this traumatized cell is now able to reconnect that it's never been able to before. So it's literally, again, able to change a person's mind and perspective that, like, it changes the way that you look at modern medicine in many ways. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
I told you,
Um,
rabbit hole.
yeah. Well, it's like it's funny. I was talking to my mom and my wife tonight. We were at dinner about like I don't really care if we legalize all drugs or not, as long as they're not as long as they're completely decriminalized and there's places to like safely use them and especially medicinally. I prefer to see a world where we trust everyone and blah blah blah. But at the very least, the medicinal property is off the charts and it's crazy.
You want to know something bananas? I was watching a YouTube video of this sheriff out in Palo Alto in California. Okay, get this. He's a sheriff of a police department. And he was saying that, cannabis is bad. And they're all lying to you. And then psychedelics are also bad for you. He says, because I know I'm a police officer. I see the teenagers that are so stoned that they're falling downstairs. I got out of that clip and I'm like, you're a police officer. Your job is not to be the DEA. Your job
Yeah,
is not to be like the freaking Maps organization. Like who, it's just
yeah.
it's so
Well, that's
challenging. It really is.
there's also a lot of confirmation bias in sampling size. If you're a police officer, you work in any sort of like criminal justice department, you're seeing a higher number of everything, and you're seeing the worst of the worst. And there's a million, literally a million in America, probably quiet stoners who are like working on Wall Street and doing most jobs. I doubt they're surgeons. I doubt they do certain high precision like occupations, but that's not
You'd be surprised. I'm not going to name
well, yeah,
anyone.
yeah, yeah. um, yeah, it's
It's just
interesting.
it's a whole different realm. And honestly, like I want to, I mean, because you're an author, and you write. This is something that you do creatively. Did it change the way that you think and process and create your work? Walk me
It
through
being,
that if you can.
yeah. Are you talking about all psychedelics, like just those experiences, or?
Well, I mean, I okay. I would say probably like shrooms would probably have a big effect. Probably like ayahuasca for sure.
Hmm.
I would 100% see if you were taking ayahuasca and you came out of that, you would be a different writer. That's
Yeah,
just
I
the
think
way, like,
my relationship to seeking truth and shutting the f up about truth has changed in both directions because of ayahuasca. And ayahuasca I did a lot, like in a short period, and it. I went to Ecuador, and I was at like these
oh wow,
ceremonies. Yeah, so
the
and I did it.
indigenous. You went to the indigenous tribes out
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Nice.
and it was definitely special. And I had like a very different experience than people I talked to and people I did it with, and I thought that was cool that we all did. Like, if seven of your friends and you go out and shroom on the beach, one of you might have a air quote bad trip, but in general, you guys are gonna have a similar trip because you're together gelling and you're like this nebulous like mob of shared consciousness, But ayahuasca, you're sharing the space and maybe the energy field, but your consciousness is like off on its own. I mean, you're like as detached as can be.
Well, the way that I
Um,
explain it, and maybe if you want to explain, you probably can explain it better than I can. It's your subconscious becomes your conscious.
that's cool. I like that a lot. Uh, and you're like talking between and about both, like a third voice almost, like which is the real voice, I think, the real you. Actually, yeah, that's exactly how I
It
explain it.
hovers. It hovers
Yeah,
over you.
yeah, yeah. And then you're kind of like for me, there was a lot of like, how's this friend doing from my past? And then like I would get like a report, and I was like, oh, so like you really can know anything you want. It's just knowledge. Like it's not. I can't know when I'm going to die because that's silly. That's not determined. But I can know like how someone's doing. Like the same way people just know to pick up the phone and call someone. Sometimes there's this weird link, at least for me, that I discovered on ayahuasca, where like I actually was talking to someone the other day. They said they call it people's imprints. Like you can just see someone's imprint. Like looking at you, I don't have to stare, but I'm like getting. I guess some people call it an aura, but for me, it's more of uh, like a link. Like you're not you're a sentient moving object to me. Like yeah,
We're aliens.
yeah, 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 yeah,
We keep on saying we're the aliens out there. We're
yeah.
aliens. Think about like where we come from. We're tadpoles, like what you see that come out of frogs' ass. That's what we once were millions of years ago. Not a million years ago, sorry.
Yeah, I know it's fascinating, and that's yeah. So for me, like
It's
I also like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, no. I was just drinking water. I'm sorry. I think it's just the connection. We keep on getting a little. It's fine. We'll
Yeah,
work through it. It's okay. Who fucking cares? But yeah,
I
I'm
definitely
interested. So
will.
one thing I was curious about, you said that like with aura and shift, one thing, if you do pay attention, you notice like the shape and feeling of things. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Definitely. Yes, yes. And
How
I
does that make
think
you feel?
that's what makes me feel like trying when I don't want to try, which goes full circle back to the loss of your father and my temporary loss of contact with my son, at least. And it's it's like you that humanity, the negative side of it, the like awful feeling, the pity, the despair, whatever period of grief it is, however long and bad that is. And then you work your back way out of it and you get back to anger and then you get back to hurt and then you get up to like normal. And then you just have like one day every 2 weeks. And you know how it is. It's like this, but that's like, you have
Imbalance.
to, yeah. So you have to remember those like lows to like increase the highs. Like for me, I'm sure for you too, it makes you more generous and you like definitely want to stop and help someone if they seem like they're in despair. And you notice the freaking people who come to your side, like come to your aid. um,
Yeah.
you got to have like a lot of gratitude points go out there to like the people who come to help you when you're going through something.
It's really not that hard to be kind. And, even when I'm having a difficult time, when I see people that I know or at work, I still say hello. I still try to be friendly because the thing is, we share this planet with close to 8 billion people, and it's there's so much to share and there's so many things to do. God, we waste so much of our time on bullshit.
Yeah, it's
Why?
unreal. I I volunteered in hospice, and that was my number one takeaway was when you're dying, you're just gonna only care about things that were valuable in a positive way. You're gonna think about love. You're gonna think about like who you could have talked to more, helped more. You're not gonna be thinking about the bullshit.
Because in the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You're someone that can understand this. I mean, for God's sakes, you have a kid. There is something about having love, caring about something, and knowing that all you get out of it is that connection from that other person. That's all you're getting out of it. I mean, paying for this, and hopefully hypothetical scenario that becomes reality. You spend your time with your kid, you're paying for their school, you're paying for you're paying for all of this. Why? Why are we doing these things? It's because you love the person and you want to raise them and you want to care for them.
Yeah, and I am remarried. I have a second child now, a daughter, and so I have
It's beautiful.
tons of love. Yeah, and I have via Skype. I get to see my son sometimes. It's always on the mom's terms. She'll just randomly call with him, but he has seen his sister before, and that's very special to me. Watching what you just talked about between like these two like way too young to even understand it, creatures. I loved your space alien comment. I just want to go back to that. That was like perfect. It's so funny that like because like you have your image of yourself right now, like what you look like, and then you're looking at a screen because we're recording, and you see what you also look like, and they're not the
Right.
same. Yeah,
No. It's when
like
you
yeah,
I say this when you see the color red and I see the color red. We see two different shades of red. The reality is that we all see, taste, feel, experience things differently. The hardest thing is to open yourself. Thing about being open-minded is it's not being about woke. It's not about being set or traditionalized in any sector or factor for that matter. It's all about finding the peace, finding that balance in yourself that it's okay when things suck. It's okay that life is not perfect. It's okay that things are not okay now. Because, like, for God's sakes, you worked in hospice. Things are temporary. Life isn't.
yeah, and also like what's okay is such a like balance of what you expected versus what you're used to. Like you know, I always say like I went to Cuba. I'm Cuban, like part quarter, and
Oh,
I
wow.
went to Cuba and I visited. I have not like super close but distant relatives. It's basically like my grandpa's brother's uh, son or something like that. Something like great uncle or something. Oh no, it's his
But you're
kid.
related, but
So
you're still family.
I'm related.
So it
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
we're family. So we flew there with like tons of Tylenol and ibuprofen
Oh,
and
my God.
like a couple other things. And like it's because like they can't get medicine and stuff. And like he made us like the finest meal they could have, and it was like chopped lettuce, rice, black beans, tomatoes, and the smallest amount of like pig ever. And they like put it on this platter in the middle, and they like served my brother and I like the lion's share. And then one of their kids didn't have a chair, and I said all this before I told you that he is the head psychologist of the country of Cuba. So they all get like the same salaries. And so it's so interesting because when I talk about like what's enough and what's success and like how much, I always go back to that. Like they're like, we would call it third world, but they're like very well educated. They do eat and stuff. And like, it was just a surreal experience. And I always think about that now whenever I'm like, I wish this had more, or this was different. I'm like, it's crazy. Like the
People,
disparity doesn't
people,
mean you deserve less, but yeah.
people got to go out to the Caribbeans. Like, I was in Santo Domingo in DR, and it was such a surreal. Okay, get this. It's the middle of the night. We're heading back to the hotel. We found this taxi driver. He has one eye. He has a car. It looks like it's been shot up by a dozen gang members. Like, You can hear the engine in the back seat. That's not a good sign. And he drives us home, and he's the sweetest guy, and he's laughing away, and he's talking. And when I was there, I was like, these people are incredible. They don't need mansions, they just need a
Yeah,
coconut by the
yeah,
beach. They just need to make a laugh. They just need familia. Just need family.
yeah,
You want to exactly. You want to call it third world? Go ahead. I don't. I call it different culture. Maybe teach
yeah.
you
Because it
something.
really is. Yeah, because they were a lot happier than a lot of people I know. But they also weren't as happy as other people I know. You know what I mean? Like that has more to do with actually the same meta conversation, which is like, what is your definition of like what is success? Because he loved his job though. That was what was interesting too. Is like he was very well educated. He'd been educated in the University of Moscow in Russia because Russia used to work with Cuba closely until like 1984. So he had like studied in Russia at the finest university, and he was like so well educated, but like living in like a place that you would expect people to rent who were like dual income less than 30,000 in America.
Because that's actually how much they're making.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but it's a different. It's a whole different world. The thing is, we as Americans have this bubble. Okay, the thing about being American is this: we don't have any ancestry that's American. Like we're not from here. None of us are from here, except if you're
yeah.
Native American or indigenous to Central and North America and South America. So we have this weird thing where we're so used to mixed culture, but we don't realize it. And we pretend to be racist, even though it doesn't really make any sense. It's mind boggling and kind of weird at the same time. When did this happen?
It's so weird. I think about it a lot. Like, I try to write about this. So I have a weekly essay I write, and I write novels. And so my weekly essays are philosophy, nonfiction, and on those, I really try to dissect like emotions and like how we are or not realizing that, like as Ram Dass once said, they're just like passing clouds. Like your vision, your consciousness just looks up at a sky, and then you see these clouds come over and you judge them as like horrible times, but like really, like you said, everything's just in a constant change. You're born and you start dying. um
And you're part
and
of the change. You go
consciousness.
along with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, there's a movement to like bury people like in organic ways now. Have you heard about that? Like, because when you put people in a coffin and embalm them, you're not like, it's the opposite of what you're supposed to do, which is decompose and help a tree grow, so to speak.
Well, I
Um,
mean, personally, and everybody thinks I'm nuts for this. I want a Viking funeral, okay? I want
that's
to be
cool.
put on a raft, be put in an ocean. I want a person to take one of those things and light that thing on fire.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh
that's awesome.
I don't it's a very weird thing that we do is with this embalming and spending so much. I'm Jewish, so I know that like our version of a funeral. This is that's serious. This is a version of a Jewish funeral. It's one day. Person dies. You bury them the same day. You throw them in there. You cry. You say your eulogies. You're done. 7 days later, family, does their thing, and then that's it. Like Jews are
Yeah.
real quick with death, and because our belief, like the kind of belief and the idea behind it is that when you die, you go back to the earth because earth is from God. So it's a cycle. So you have to return it back to where it belongs. But it's a
That's very
very
cool.
it's kind of like twisted because now no, it's like, we got to preserve the body. We got to make sure it lasts as long as possible. It kind of goes against nature.
Yeah, I definitely think it does, and that's definitely like my like you know I really think a lot about like hate. Like racism is a form of it, bigotry, homophobia. It doesn't matter. Like whatever form it comes in, I try to think about like how and why that's occurring all the time. That's like because I don't want to find a party to blame. I want to find a solution to helping people, you know, address the source of hate. Like, it's probably anger. Yeah, Marcus Aurelius wrote about.
Oh
He agreed with the
yes.
idea that like a crime in passion is way better than a crime from desire because like your moods and your mood swings make you temporarily irrational. So we have second degree murder, which is like in the heat of the moment, unplanned, you kill someone, versus a premeditated murder is much
Well,
higher punishment.
there's like this cloud that goes over a person when they're in that moment. There's a
Yeah,
difference. There's a difference of when you murder somebody in the moment because there's that anger. It's like you're
yeah,
so angry at this person that you lash out. It's just it's strange because when a person calms down, this is a lot of times what happens when they calm down. It's really hard to take in.
yeah.
It's strange.
It's really strange. And I think about it a lot. I think about like when you see two people you don't know get into a heated fight and start like physically attacking or not, but that moment where everyone in the room like feels it, no one's talking anymore, like there's like an energy, like a palpable, and like you feel it, and depending on where you are, if you think guns are going to come out, you run, but that anger, it's like, so it's not fascinating to me like I want to eat popcorn and watch it. It's like I'm sure that's the main thing we're not addressing in at least our culture,
No, we're
is
not.
like,
And
yeah,
I wanted to bring this out because uh you know what the seven dirty words are? The seven
yeah,
dirty words
George
from
Carlin.
George Carlin, which I will say this again on this podcast, which is shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. And I bring this up because when you talk about anger and aggression that goes towards people, these are just words. They're just words. That's all they are. And when you have these terms that we have towards each other, whether it be racist or homophobic or bigotry, they're just words. Calm down. It's okay. Relax. It's just bananas how one word that I can right now with this thing can make somebody go kill somebody.
Yeah,
What?
it's insane.
It
um
really is.
and it's strange because like living in two different times, like the pre-internet, post-internet era for me. I was born in 1981, so internet. I was
99.
like dial-up, AOL. There you go. So yeah, so the 6 years before you were born were like the beginning of like this culture that we're immersed in now, like the uh, check in online, go online, that kind of stuff. But really, it was just commerce for the first 10 years. It wasn't like social. And the social wave though has made this like speech thing worse somehow, which is weird to me. But it's also just like, I always wonder, like, have things gotten worse, or are we just seeing it now? Like, it wasn't as visible.
Well, it was different. I mean, this may come to a shock to you, but the thing about my childhood was it was a lot of like what went on in the 90s. As a kid, the internet was still very new. So I didn't really, we had dial up, but we didn't really have internet. So we were very much more exposed to the world. My, honestly, like, I'm very lucky for this. Kind of the thing that helped me be able to see the world clearly was the fucked up environment that I grew up in,
Makes
which is
sense.
kind of, that's kind of what does it to you sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a lot because like my son has an origin story of like not having his dad in his life after two. I was with him every single day till he's two, and then boom, not. And so that's like his feeder story, like in his head, and he can take that and say like any version of it he wants, however he wants his whole life. And my childhood was like very warm, and my parents stayed together, and so I don't feel guilty about it, but I do think all the time about how weird it is that like I always thought my children would share that childhood, and my daughter's getting it, but he's not.
You don't always get
And
to choose, though. That's the thing. It's
yeah, yeah.
you can make plans from today until tomorrow, but listen, the universe says nah. The answer is nah.
Yeah. What was your I don't want to force you to say anything you don't want to, but like what did a bad childhood like occur and do to you? Like how do you define that?
Well, I grew up in First of all, I grew up in a Jewish cult in Rockland County, New York. I didn't grow up in the insane part, but I grew up in parts of it. I just grew up in a home where there was no really form of relationship or communication of any sorts, and I never really had any of that except with very few people in my life. So I constantly had a yearning for like understanding, connection,
Yeah, that's deep.
like some
Yeah,
type of meaning. And it took me a while, and it's still taking me a while to kind of like figure out what that was. But that curiosity, that's what I'm going to call it. That curiosity is what kind of piques you to kind of peek up through the crevices, kind of look through the peephole, make sure nobody
yeah.
is there and they're wearing their pants, of course, but make sure you can see what's going through that peephole. Ugh.
That's interesting. I grew up Bay Area Reformed Jew, so like we're like
Wow.
if you
So
want like a
different.
little Jewish salt on your like I memorized three prayers for Shabbat. We did it like a couple Fridays, not all the time. Um, and my wife's mother and father are Orthodox Jew. Um,
Oh,
so that's
wow.
so, but I met my wife 6 years ago, so that was the first time I ever met. I mean, again, just for anyone like listening or watching, California Jews, it's like the like
Very
you know,
different. Very
yeah,
different. Night and day
it's
to New York Jews. Like we
yeah,
are
like not
like,
even,
black and white, black and white cookie. Of course we know this, opposite
yeah,
sides 100%.
yeah. So yeah, so it's been a trip, like getting to know them, and like they're great. I mean, I love them, and her brother is Orthodox, lives in Chappaqua, and which is New York, for people listening. And yeah, it's been fascinating because where I grew up had almost no religion. It's like the atheist capital of the world. And then I went to college with a bunch of Catholics. Not It wasn't a Catholic school, but it was Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And then now my in-laws, part of them, not all, are Orthodox Jew, and it's just like so fascinating to like travel and see. And I also was married, like I said, to a Thai person, so I used to live in Thailand on and off, and like that's a
Wow.
Buddhist driven culture. Like in Thailand, they save seats on the bus for monks. Like it's interesting.
Yeah, because like they're very holy. Like it's a very like important part of culture. It's interesting because I think you've mentioned like you've traveled tried immensely. I'm trying to do that. Like I've covered a few places, but I'm curious to hear from you. Like, we've already talked about, kind of like your experience of going to these places, like culture wise and
Yeah,
I love
well, I always love traveling, and on top of that, I was an ESL teacher for many years at a
oh
private
wow,
adult school. So I got to teach people from like all over the world constantly. So cross culture is definitely my favorite subject in the world. Like, there's nothing I enjoy more, and it's because to me, it's fascinating that like like the sacred cow. Like in India, a cow is sacred. In our country, we grow them for slaughter, and like a billion a year. I mean,
and
it's
they're
crazy to think
delicious.
about it.
Mm-mm-mm.
Yeah, like so imagine how those billions of Indians feel about us doing that. You know what I mean? It would be like if they grew dogs the way we grow cows. Um,
How
yeah,
could
and
they?
ate them and
Oh
milked them and
no,
milked them.
no, no, puppy, leave the puppies alone.
So cross culture is interesting to me just because you
Yes,
can see that it didn't have to be this way. Like you grow up in a place and you just think this is how everywhere on earth is, and then as you expand, Japan was one of the more interesting trips for me. It wasn't my favorite, but it was like they're the most different culture I've ever seen in my life. I mean, just like
everything,
that. Yeah, the movie Lost in
everything.
Translation does a great job of showing that, I think.
I knew somebody that was Japanese, and my experience was I sweated more after that dinner than I ever in my life. Because everything chopsticks, napkin, shoes, where you sit, where you go, how you it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
bro,
yeah, yeah. It's not a relaxed.
no, it's not. But there's a beauty there's a beauty towards it. Like their culture is very strong on like respect, trust, and honor, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like they get offended very easily, which I don't blame them. I totally get that, but they're a lot of fun to party with. So I've
Yeah,
heard.
my friend moved there, and he has lived there for 15, almost 20 years now. And he married a Japanese woman, has two kids. And so we went to visit him. And one time before we went to visit him, he told me the story. I'll never forget it though. He was in a cab on the way home from a karaoke bar at like 3 in the morning, completely wasted because that's their culture at night. It's just drink, drink, drink. No one drunk drives there. They have like a total setup system and everything. Anyway, and he dropped the equivalent of a $1 bill on the back of the taxi cab. And 6 hours later, his door buzzer was going off like crazy from where he'd been dropped off. And it was the driver, and he was returning the dollar because it's honorable.
Wow.
And yeah,
Yeah.
so
Talk
uh,
about different cultures, okay? You know? By the way, like it's kind of crazy because I love electronics, like I love film photography and cars. Talking about Japan, do you want to know why Japanese products, why people buy Toyotas and they're such great cars? Japanese are insane craftsmen. Like the second they're like, we build engines, they take it to an insane level. They have teams that work on the layers of metal.
yeah, it's so cool.
What do you mean you work on the layers of metal? No, like legit, this is an actual team of Toyota that they have in Japan. Like,
Crazy.
it's crazy. Like, so what other
And
experiences you had in like other
yeah,
countries?
so like yeah, one of my favorites, even though it's like English speaking and not quote
I
unquote
love this,
exotic,
by
would
the
be
way. Ah,
Scotland. Yeah, I know. I recommend Scotland to everyone. It's just one of the
I love
coolest
to go.
cultures. Yeah, beautiful and very fun. I'm trying to think of like I haven't thought about travel in a long time because it's been since
Well,
2018 now because my
well,
daughter.
you mentioned Scotland. It's funny because I have a
Mhm.
good friend of mine out in Manchester, and she has friends out in Scotland, and I have to get out to the UK one of these days.
Oh,
Um,
go, yeah.
and and go out there, like, bro. English people, shout out. Anybody that's from Britain that's watching this podcast right now, I love y'all. You are so fun. It really is. Like, was one of the greatest experiences I had. Oh my god, that's another place that people don't go to London. I'm sorry, it's too expensive. Screw
Yeah,
London. Go to Manchester. You want to experience England? Go all the way up north.
yeah. When I was a teacher, I was on a tour of England to help teach,
Oh
and
wow.
I got to go to like seven different cities, and I like Liverpool was awesome.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Um,
It's dirty, but
yeah,
it's
and
beautiful.
yeah, but it's cool. I mean, I think like we were saying, just traveling and exchanging like cultures is really interesting to me. I definitely well now there's like the big old war between Ukraine and Russia, but Russia was a place I always wanted to go to like very badly. Um,
I do too. Like I love I've always had a love of like Russian culture because I went
yeah,
to high school in Brooklyn and I used to hang around Sheepshead Bay and there's a lot of Russians
cool.
out there and they are
Yeah,
okay, here's the thing, like I'll be honest, this is just my experience. Russians will seem very tough and scary at first. They're very sweet and loving people once you get to know them. You just kind of have
yeah.
to like you got to just push the vodka glass, just a little close. I'm not joking. Like you seriously have to like
Yeah.
have a drink with them and kind of have it just like that laugh and experience and they just like that. They're your friends.
Well, and also there's like that, the culture thing of like smiling is a different thing in different cultures completely.
Mhm.
Like Japanese people also, like they do not smile. Like it's very like alarming and threatening to smile at someone in public. It's not polite. Um, and like as an American, you're like super hypersensitive to if someone doesn't smile back to you. You take it like very, it's not aggressive, but it's certainly like, okay, there's something off here. So like in America, if you walk down the street, you're supposed to smile at each other. That's not every country.
I mean,
And
I kind of find
Russia,
that
yeah,
I mean, yeah, in Russia you smile at somebody, they're going to come right up to be like, "You KGB? You KGB?"
yeah.
No.
They
Oh
think,
my god.
yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I love it. Have you so
um,
you haven't been to Russia though?
no, and I'm actually like part Latvian, Estonian. That's the Jewish part.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I will go. I mean, I'm sure of it. I don't. You know, I I am sure there will be wars in my lifetime, and I'm sure like travel will be affected by it. But I would hope to think that their borders will reopen, things will be easier. I mean, I'm sure you can technically go to Russia right now. I just don't think it would be the most wonderful trip right now.
I don't think so either. I mean, with all of their knockoff products, which are just the same thing, just stickers put over them. I mean, it, I also feel like it would be really dangerous as an American. You know, like let's be real. Americans don't really have a great. We're not great at hiding that we're not Americans. Okay, let's be honest. When we go to other countries, people know we're coming. Okay, they know
Yeah,
who's Americans. It's
and
hard to hide it.
they know the Canada sticker now. They
Oh
don't
my
even
god.
care. They're like, no, f you. You're all from the same place. uh, my friend who's Canadian got so mad at that. She's like, you guys screwed us. Um, yeah,
Well, thankfully, we don't have Trudeau as our prime minister.
no, yeah.
Yeah, we have Biden
But
that definitely needs adult diapers, but I'm
yeah,
gonna I'm gonna stick with ours.
I
Uh,
really try not to follow politics because it's part of
no,
my
no,
key
no,
to
no, 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 no,
happiness.
no, no,
But
no.
I was
I'm just a
unable to escape. No, no,
I'm
no.
just
I'm with you.
I'm just a comic.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. No, I'm completely with you. And I saw the Biden fall thing the other day, and that's what I was. It's just unreal. I just can't. We're gonna have a like geriatric election for the third time.
Well, look,
Um,
I work for a durable medical company, so if the White House administration ever needs durable medical products, they can always call our company. They probably already do. Oh God, I don't look. The thing is, like, all politics aside, it's a lot of fun when you don't give a shit.
yeah,
Because to
I totally
me,
agree.
when I see the president campaign, to me, it's like Saturday Night Live. Come on, that's what it is
Totally.
to me. Like, come on,
Yeah.
let's get the popcorn, let's get the weed. This is going to be fun. Because usually it
It's
is
so yeah. It's a
so
circus.
entertaining.
It's crazy. Everything in my lifetime hasn't changed, but the focus has changed. Like the camera angle is different, and like how we're tuning into what. But it's pretty interesting. Like I remember growing up. I was in high school when the Bill Clinton Monica Lewinsky thing was going on,
Oh my
and I
God.
remember people saying like, "This is the end of Earth. Like our culture's impossibly separated." Blah blah
The
blah. And
90s.
then the same thing, and then the same thing. So now when I hear it, I'm like, yeah, I guess our culture's just kind of always been divided. Like that's, I guess, a culture. Like we are a culture that is. We had a civil war in the 1860s. Doesn't sound like much has changed.
Um, no, not that much has changed, except we've gotten a few
Yeah,
more states, few
yeah.
more cities. It's really like you have to kind of ask yourself this question: where you as a creator, you as somebody that, as an author and as a writer, do you sign yourself for creating what, like, the mass industry wants you to make? What would sell and what would be like the best product, to be an Amazon bestseller? Or do you take the approach of being a creator that does what you want to do? Like, you want your audience, people that are reading what you're making, to hear what you have to say.
I definitely do what I want to do, and I've always done it that way. And when I paid attention to the results, it was always hard because it was never matching what I'd wanted as a kid. And then the day I stopped paying attention to the results, I started getting the results I always wanted. And I like anytime I think a piece too much and I'm like, what if this offends like Aunt Jane or like, this person, or like, especially if I think about like the emerging, like, quote unquote, like woke Gen Z and like boomer, if like I try to like worry about offending either of those sides or anyone else, it just becomes like stupid. Like there's no point to it. So I don't worry about offending people. I try to bring love into what I write, and it's pretty amazing. Like, and I definitely notice though when I start to like creep back to old habits, and I'm like looking to see like feedback and stuff. Feedback is like helpful from editors and collaborators. It's not helpful from random people you don't know. Like it's just not. Definitely not.
It's also, again, it's just words.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah, yeah.
if if you as a writer need to express a character a certain way, or need to create a scenario, which there are a lot of times you need to have that type of feeling and emotion and expression because it makes it interesting. Okay, let's be real.
Yeah.
And it adds a deeper element that you see this darker side to the character. Uh, being like, oh my God, I have to be inclusive. No, you don't have to be inclusive. This character is supposed to be like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. It's so weird why like television can have like a million different shows, and some of them should be representational, and some should be fantasy, and some should be this, but like they don't all have to be the same thing. And that's like that inclusivity word is so weird and foreign to me now because inclusive means including the darker side of humanity, the shadow, the like the grit, you know, like when you go to a city and there's like smog and pollution and glorious size skyscrapers. That's a good metaphor for life.
Yeah, great metaphor for life. You're definitely going to be living past 62.
Yeah.
Uh, it's kind of strange though, because when you take in this idea of inclusivity, you know, this idea of like one and togetherness, whatever bullshit they're calling it these days. It's look, I want a real comedy film. Do you know how hard it is for us to get a real
Yeah. Oh my
comedy?
God.
The one that Burt Kreischer just came out with, one, The
Yeah.
Machine. Ah, finally! It was like, bro, I
Yeah.
think I've waited like 7 years for a film like this to be made.
Yes. And he talked about that. I mean, it's like crazy. Like, oh God, the golden era of comedy, it just came to such an abrupt stop. All the studio, and that's the weird thing is this is where it's so hard to like, there's studios that just won't do it now. They're just too scared. And it sucks. And people who like it aren't going to like, you don't campaign for things you like the way people who hate things campaign. It just isn't the same momentum. So
No, and it's also like the fact that sometimes you need to have that exceptionally obnoxious gay character, okay, that is also
yeah,
played by
yeah.
Kevin Hart, in the movie to make it funny. And you know, it's just like, God, I wish in a way we can just kind of get out of our heads and just let writing be writing and just let it be for
Mhm.
what it is, not what it isn't. It's like, I'm tired of fucking seeing the inclusive move. I don't care. I don't care. Like, I don't want to be like a person that's like trying to hate on anybody. It's like, stop forcing your agenda on us.
Yeah, because it's art. Art shouldn't have an agenda. The agenda is a stupid agenda or it's a good agenda, but let that be in agenda politics and all that. However, with art, art usually reflects society, informs it, and predicts it. So like, let it run its crazy course, you know. And like, also things that suck just suck. Like, if a comedy's not funny because it's racist, it's gonna suck. No one's gonna like it.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, like the biggest fear people have is that we're gonna have a return to like sexism and homophobia and bigotry and all these other words. But I think if you educate people appropriately to have critical thinking skills, everything's safe and it's fine. And no smart person goes to see a stupid racist movie ever.
Except some people. But
I don't know if they're intelligent. I really, if they're critical thinking, I should say. I don't know what word it is for that.
you know, I've said this so many times and it's true. We as artists, our minds process and think differently. And I'm going to be real here for a second. People that don't understand or are non-artists, I don't want to exclude people, but this is just a fact of life. You don't understand what goes into creation. Like telling an artist that you have to do these things because this is what society wants you to. You're telling us not to do what makes us
Yeah.
us. So doesn't
And
really
well, the
doesn't really
return of
work out.
comedy is definitely coming. And I mean, the
Oh,
way, you know,
please, please,
my
please.
wife and I go to comedy clubs like 15,
Mm-hmm.
30 times a year. And like, you know, the movies, that was what you talked about. Cause that is like, that is the thing that has changed the most. Like there were like nothing but amazing comedies until like an abrupt year. I don't know when it was. And
2014? I think it was like
yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
2014. Yeah.
And if you go back
Yeah.
too, it's like crazy. Like in your much shorter than mine lifetime, you have already seen the rules change for like, I mean, that's
Hangover,
crazy. Yeah.
Neighbors, Adam Sandler, Will Ferrell, Pineapple Express. bro, I grew up on, like, I went to Blockbuster. We used to rent these movies like nobody's business because that
Yeah,
was like, I grew up with comedy films, and it's like really
yeah,
hard now that it doesn't really. I really hope it comes back. Honestly, like I really hope it
yeah,
comes back because like
yeah, yeah,
it makes you go out to the movie theater and smoke weed with everybody else there.
yeah.
You know?
Yes, yes. If they want us stoners to come back out in public, you got to
Oh
give us something to
yeah.
do.
Yeah, what do you think? What do you think people are doing in a movie theater watching a comedy with Bert Kreischer? We're all fucking stoned, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
I remember like the movie started, and all of a sudden you just heard like shh, just everybody like pulling on their pens and all vaping
That's awesome. That's so
simultaneously.
great.
It was beautiful.
That's so great. I still haven't seen it yet, but I'm definitely planning on it. That's high priority for me.
You haven't seen the
Um,
movie?
Not yet, but I'm definitely going to. I
Oh,
saw him
you
live
must.
like downtown. What was it? 4 months ago, we saw him.
How is he live? I've heard mixed reviews. Like he's some people tell me that he's great live. Some people tell me he's terrible live.
I thought he was great, but I don't. I literally have seen like 75 or 100 comics in the last 5 years, probably. Like, there's a great club here in Phoenix that we go to like all the time, and everyone comes there. And he was at a more like bigger stage. I would put him up in the top. He's like a top 50 comedian. He's a top 20 top 25 to 50. He's in like that range. He's not. He tells stories and he's memorized them and they're good, but he doesn't have that like succinct brevity and like repertoire that like the great ones do. Like Chris Rock, I saw like a year ago, and he blew me away. Like, he just like everything he did was beyond perfect. Um, and he like hinted at the slapping thing and then brought it back, and like just every way he did it. And he made so much fun of his kids, yet you could tell how much he loves them. And like word choice and diction. Bert is just a lot more like, my God, this is the most honest motherfucker ever. And he's like bearing it all out there, everything about his family, and it's hilarious. But like the writing, editing side isn't like at the like top level. So
Okay. Yeah. I could,
yeah.
because you get that. Like you have comics that are very like clean. They're
Mhm.
dirty, but they're very like put together. You know, like they've
Yeah.
sat there and they kind of put their pieces together. And then you get those type of comics that just go up there and they're just animals. They're
Yeah, 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 yeah,
animals.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, and I saw Seinfeld last year. He blew me out of the water. His energy is like so high on stage. I couldn't believe it.
He's
Not at
gotten.
all what I would have predicted.
I've heard he's gotten funnier with age.
Oh my God. And he's just on it. He's just always seen
Dirty
culture
or
through like
clean? Is he
this.
still clean?
Oh, clean as you can be.
Wow.
Yeah. Clean as you can be, and
Crazy.
talking about everything. And he said, I mean, nothing was off the table. Like, he is not afraid. He doesn't care. He's just like, and you know what's cool? Like, because Larry David shares this with him, they're just calling out assholes. Like, it doesn't matter what race, sex, gender, philosophy, sexual orientation, this, that, or the other. Like, their jokes work and they don't get like screwed with, because you can't attack it because it's like a neutral comment about the surrounding element, and what's inside is like, you suck. You're the reason we're all annoyed on the airplane. You're the reason we're annoyed in the restaurant.
Oh, I don't like those people.
Yeah, yeah,
I really it's what we like to call the Karen.
yeah, yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out what the male version is. I don't know if there is, but
No, they say the
no,
Chad, but like that's a different.
no, no, no.
Yeah, it's
It's not.
not.
No, no. It's really strange because like I mean, comedy is kind of having its real big shift. I mean, like for yourself, how would you describe yourself as a writer?
Um,
Only hard questions here.
no, I know. I'm trying to think of one. I would just say dynamic, because I write very different things all the time. I have all 7 of my novels are completely different.
Oh
I don't write
wow.
the same genre. My essays are incredibly different, um, which are free at mikeyop.com. And
Ooh, check it out.
yeah, throw that in there.
Mm-hmm.
But no, but yeah, I would say dynamic, because I just switch gears a lot. And then I think the one thing that, as a writer of novels, that I know I'm best at is my dialogue. Like I just have this ear. I play all the instruments and stuff. I have an ear for the musicality of language, and like so that's what I, you know. But my plots are pretty crazy.
Well, I don't, I'm not 100%. Do you play music?
Yeah, yeah. I was in a band until I was like 26, or a couple bands. We used to tour
Damn.
actually the like upstate New York and like into Philly, New York area. But
Oh my
we were
God.
not, you know, personally, I felt successful. We were not successful. Just
Look, it happens, but you were part of a band. I mean, hello,
yeah, no, it was so fun.
how many people get to say that, you know? At least like you got that experience out of it.
Well, that's what, like I said, like the one thing in my life is I have no regrets. I just followed my heart and my intuition, and with the exception of uh, not getting out of a marriage way before I should have, I have made very few mistakes that I think about.
Do you feel like you've treaded yourself carefully when you get yourself in situations?
Yeah, but I also just have a lot of foresight. Like I knew when I was doing drugs and my friends were doing them the wrong way to kind of just leave that group of friends. Like I could always tell like when people were starting to go into like uh yeah, I've just always been able to avoid
You have like this
it's like the
feeling.
corny. Yeah, yeah, it's really just this feeling like, and I was about to say it's like corny, but like almost like there's an archangel or someone like around. Like there's just been these times where I've just known like get out of here. Like just this isn't a good situation. And like I've never abruptly ended a friendship, but I've definitely like 3 times left a group of friendship that they went, like wayward in like morality and other things.
I feel that. I
Um,
mean, one thing about me, like, I have this thing with people that when I have these experiences with friends, sometimes I'll start drifting. And there's basically like a force that's like, no, there's no more connection with this person. Like, this is not.
yeah,
And I will think about this person here and there, but I'll never message them. I'll never call them.
yeah,
Nothing.
dude,
I don't
that's as
know.
profoundly as you could put it, and that is like 100% when I was on ayahuasca. That would be like the filtered bottom line was like, there's like that famous saying, like a friend, like for a season, a reason, or whatever, a life. Like there's some friendships are just supposed to run their course, and I think we screw up when we try to like stay together too much, or when we part early. And like so I'm glad I had my son. I'm really glad I had what I had, but like we just had to part ways, and as much as it sucks, I know that in the grand scheme of life this all works out, because I already feel good. I feel good right now.
It's it's weird because to experience it in a way, you do need to have hallucinogenics, but you can also experience these things without hallucinogenics. The thing about humans is our minds get shifted and change when we interact with people, like what we're doing right now. This
Yeah,
change is it changes you as you go through these progressions throughout time and throughout your life. And you then have to ask yourself this: do you want to, I can spend all of my time worried about what will be right and what will be wrong, or can I focus more on the time that I have to spend it on those moments that I feel those connections? Damn, I feel like a life coach right now, but I promise I'm not.
no, no, and it's interesting too because like the feeling of being right is never good. It like I've been right but lonely, and it's like a weird lesson. Sometimes it's okay to suck it up, see the other person's side, come to their level, and just let the thing happen. Like, you want to like say no to like someone who's going to drive a car off a cliff, but if they're going to like dent the door opening it into something and it's going to avoid like you and them having major conflicts, sometimes you just got to let them do that. It's a weird thing in life. People have to make mistakes. If you have a friend who's making a smaller mistake, sometimes you just got to let them do it.
I usually am the person that's always telling people, I told you so. I am. I always am.
Yeah, yeah.
I always, because I can always read situations. I have had a good friend of mine, true story. A few years ago, I lived in Israel for about 3 years. And She had this boyfriend, and they were together for a long time. I'm talking about like about 2 or 3 years. And she was telling me, that he's been kind of distant, but I really want to get married and get engaged. I told her, I said, look, I said, I'll be honest with you. I think at this point, I think you need to break this off. And I think you need to look elsewhere. She's like, no, I've invested all of this time. That I said, look, I'm telling you, I feel like you're going to just get yourself hurt. Sure enough, 3 months later, he left her for her best friend.
Yeah. That's that intuition. I mean, that's the main thing. Again, like ayahuasca psychedelics has taught me is just go with your intuition. Like sometimes you like want so badly to think like this is good, this is gonna work, but your heart guidance system, it's not literally in your heart, but it's definitely around there. That thing is so much sharper and smarter than you. And sometimes it's crazy. Like it's not panic, so it's not like don't get on that plane, final destination shit. No, it's like pretty damn realistic and pragmatic. It'll be like no, you should sign up for that class that sounds hard. That will be a good experience. And then like you do it. And then you end up meeting someone amazing or the professor like or teacher changes your life, and or you like you want to like I always tell people like you want to do pottery and they're like, yeah, but like who cares about pottery anymore? Like you care about pottery. Like just go learn pottery.
Yeah.
Like there's so much time on earth. Teaching yourself fun things is a great idea.
Well, it's also the fact that you remember how you said earlier on how we're here and we can see what we look like. The thing about people is when you talk to somebody and explain what you're going through, this other person is going to take their knowledge and their experience and apply it to what you're telling them. So the advice you're asking somebody to give you is from their perspective because there's something that you're not putting together. The thing that we always do is we never fucking listen. So it's like
No, no.
it's pointless to even do it.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the reason why we do it subconsciously, I think. I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I definitely know there's been times where both my parents or one of my parents has told me like, "You're gonna regret this," or "This isn't a smart idea," and I do it anyway. And then it's so many years before I realized how right they were, and I still had to go through and make the mistake. And along the way, I
Years?
had so many good
Wow.
experiences. Yeah, there's been like times where they were like, "This thing, blah blah blah," and like years later, I was like, "Oh, they're right. Had I taken the time to do that back then, I wouldn't be rushing to learn it now or to do it now." And, yeah, they definitely there's listening to elders is stupid advice because not all people who live long are smart or wise. But crowdsourcing the people 2 generations above you is actually a pretty good idea. I think that's why I don't like when I see like young and old people talking shit on each other. It's like both of you are silly. Like young people also have an energy and a youthful perspective to provide older people with.
Yeah, and it's weird because for me, I am 24 and most of, kind of conversations and stuff like I like I'm having with you is kind of just like my normal thing. And the one thing I get is like, "Oh, you're so young." And I'm like, thank you. I don't really know what I could process from that. It's just weird. We have this like thing of age. Bro, I know some people that are in their 80s and they're really fucking fun to hang out with. Like, I know people in their 40s and 50s that are really fun to hang out. It's just an age. God,
Yeah,
we're so drab sometimes. Like, ugh, they're 45. Who cares?
it's
Like,
it's
does
very weird. Yeah.
like how does it honestly ask yourself this question? How does somebody's age matter to you if you're just having a relationship, like a connection with this person?
Yeah. It's and it's funny we were talking about Japanese culture and also Thailand. Age is so important there. And like you like literally don't put your feet pointing in the direction of like the oldest person in the room in Thailand and like you're like thinking hyper thinking. No, if you're from there you're probably not hyper thinking, but if you're like us and you're visiting or you're just like oh my god, like and you have to remember like I speak some Thai. There's different terms for different like age above you and below you and you have to like remember to attach them and stuff. So like you're constantly talking about age. And it's out of deference. It's out of like taking care of older people, and also letting them call the shots and eat first.
Damn, I guess it's like when you turn 80 in Thailand, it's like, bro, all right,
Yeah,
now I'm
yeah,
the cool
yeah,
one in the house.
yeah. Yeah. Give me all the
God.
food.
It's amazing because our version of retirement is you stuff your parents in a retirement home, you pay this company $40,000 a year, and you forget about them. Interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
American culture for you. Sponsored by Pfizer. But anyway. Oh God. I mean, like seriously, like throughout your career as a writer, and how is it like how long have you been doing this? Like for you yourself, like when did you decide or when did it come into your head like, oh, I want to be an author?
The first time officially was 2006 because I was playing music from 99 through 2006. I played music all the way till like 2012, but I suddenly realized that I didn't love performing so much that maybe there were other pursuits that were more like so I was good at performing and I'm like fine, I can get on stage and play instruments, I'm not afraid of crowds. I don't enjoy it, it's like a weird thing. I just like I'd much rather be in the crowd watching the band, and that
Interesting.
happened for years and years and years. And in one of my bands I was like the lead singer, and that's awkward because I wasn't getting the high you're supposed to be getting. And I think that's not only obvious to me, but it's obvious to the audience. You know what I mean? Like if you
You're
go to
not,
see a,
it's the vibes. It's like
yeah,
it's like going to see Queen now and seeing Adam Lambert come onto the stage. I'm
yeah.
sorry, you were saying?
No, yeah. So I mean, it's so writing in 2006. I entered this contest called the 3 Day
Mm-hmm.
Novel Contest, and it was,
Ooh.
can you write a novel in 3 days? And not
Wow.
only could I, but I could do it like easily. It was like not hard for me. Um,
You wrote
so
a
I just
novel.
thought about it.
You wrote a novel in 3 days.
Yeah, but a caveat, like now that I'm experienced, it's more like a novella. It wasn't like a
Okay.
novel's 80,000 words. This one was 50, I think, or 55.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. You
but
you
they,
scare
their rule,
you scare me there
yeah.
for a second.
Well, their rule was they called it a novel contest, and it wasn't until
Okay.
later when I went and got an MFA that I realized there's actual cutoffs in the publishing industry. So
Oh.
to be a novel, it has to be 60,000 minimum, but most novels are 80,000 words. Um,
Okay.
yeah. And so yeah, so anyway, I loved writing so much I decided to pursue an MFA degree, Master of Fine Arts, and with that came a terminal teaching degree, which was very awesome. So I got to teach and be a writer for many years. Now I'm still a writer, and I also index books, which is super weird and fun.
So you were like really able to like hone your craft. I mean, it's great that you were able to like go to school and learn it more and kind of understand it. Uh, it's so crazy when you take something that you're passionate about and like turn it into this is what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, and it's worth it. It takes forever to be successful and good at things for some people, and it takes very little time for others. But if you love it, you should do it. You're just here. You're like this, like we said, we're space aliens. Like, no one really knows why we're here. Some of us want to be embalmed. Some of us want to be thrown into a Viking funeral.
Yeah.
I don't really care, yeah, and I think the one thing I can definitely tell you just at 41, about to be 42, is like you're doing it right. I can tell you for sure
I'm
because you're,
trying.
yeah. I mean, like you're in your own studio in your house. You're having your show exactly how you want it. You're calling your own shots. You have a day job, which is like reasonable. Like no one ever said. Like I think it's weird when people think like you should be starving to be an artist. Like that's silly. Like you should be adequately fed and doing things, and like you'll find time for it. If you love it, you'll find time for it.
Yes.
Everyone does.
The thing about being an artist now more than ever is realizing you can have a voice if you want to, but you cannot expect the world to come groveling at your feet and push you up to the top.
Hmm.
You have to work at it. And, I can't even imagine. I mean, you started in 2006. It
Yeah, yeah.
takes a long time to be a successful musician, it takes a long time to be a successful writer, for that matter.
Yeah, and as someone told me too, there's successful at your instrument, there's successful at your what you're doing, and then there's successful at commercial business, which is selling and profiting and selling yourself as a brand. And that's a whole thing that you and I have both grown into and grown up with, which is like this idea of like self promotion. You know, you used to hunt for gatekeepers. And so now we're in the wild, wild west of like, there's a million YouTube channels, a million podcasts, a million different things to listen to and watch. And that means less hand-picked gods, but more artists. So I love it personally.
It really like gives you it gives you a self of perspective. You know, it really like opens yourself up to something that can make you really happy. You know, nobody's telling you to stop working your day job. Nobody's telling you to like starve yourself, but if you can take the time that you can. Look, I'll be honest, this is my mentality. People are like, "Oh, party in your 20s." I'm not partying in my 20s. I'm working in my 20s. I work all the time. I take a little time to go on vacation and like go out once in a blue moon, but I'm spending most of my time doing things like this because if you want to be successful and you're young, why don't you use your time wisely and use it to make something for yourself? You know, like don't be like one of those people like, oh, why did I do this? Maybe you shouldn't
Yeah.
have partied that much.
Yeah. And that energy you have, oh man, like I'm not like old and decrepit, but that energy of youth is so awesome. It's a drug in itself. And if it's too much energy for you that you're gonna like go get wasted every night, I understand you and I understand your motivations, but like see what else you could throw that energy into, because like you're doing, and holy crap, don't like work yourself to death though. You know, that's definitely something, a caveat I would. um, you know,
Yeah,
the financial system could collapse and all that precious digital money you have is going to be jacked, squat. So definitely, you know,
yeah,
have friendships.
the reset is coming. We know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
that's
Oh, for sure.
it's something we don't want to talk about, but it's definitely
Oh, it's it's
it's
going to be weird. It's going
it's
to be weird because like COVID was a precursor to how we deal with bad news. Like,
like hello.
yeah, there's just going to be this like, like I remember like when COVID was emerging, it was like there's no toilet paper, people are dying. I'm spraying my mail, and like it was just like watching people
Same.
panic and then watching people like try to not let the because if panic spills a little bit too much over, it's very scary. Like no one wants to live in a culture that's actually rioting and like on the verge of collapse. And
No.
money is the quickest way to do that. um, so I don't know how they're going to do. They're going to have to very slowly tell everyone, "Oh, you don't actually have what you think you do anymore." Or, I don't
See,
know.
but we're gonna know this long before they ever announce it. Cause
Yeah,
here's the deal. They're not gonna tell you. We are. You know, it's kind of the reality is, do you want to have a forced agenda or do you want to have your own opinion? Got to make a choice.
yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting to hear you talk about it. I always wonder what different people in different enclaves are talking about and like how aware or not aware.
Well,
Um, there's no mass media coverage of this at all.
no, of course not. There's no mass media coverage of psychedelics at all. I mean, they're trying to label it as bad, even though all the veterans that have been committing suicide have
Yeah,
been benefiting from MDMA and is going to be federally legalized hopefully next year. Please. Um it's bullshit, it's bad. It's that I personally am tired of it. I'm tired of it because I know it to not be true. You're taking away things that have been beneficial for thousands of years, but some fucktard 70 years ago that had a very big dick in his pants decided, no, we don't like this. We have to force our opinion against these people. Where
yeah.
does it stop?
And it's crazy because it's a mechanic to keep people from thinking. Like I've said it like a couple times. Critical thinking. I mean, I think you don't need to go to school and like open books and be taught it. It's also part of what we're talking about, just having an expanding open consciousness, open mind, like taking experiences. Experiences will raise that,
And take you
and then you're nobody's
places.
fool. Yeah.
Well, honestly, Mike, I mean, this has absolutely been an incredible experience, and it's really cool to like hear from other creators and artists and writers, just the experience and what you've picked up in life. Question for you: where can these wonderful people find you?
Yeah, it's real simple. One link, mikeyop.com, MIKEYOPP.com. From there, you'll find me. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and Blue Sky. And I'm not really on them, though, that much. So I'm on them, like, dutifully. But if you go to my page and you subscribe for free, you'll hear from me once a week. It's philosophy and humor and podcasts and stuff sometimes. So, and I had a great time. It's awesome. Thank you.
And you also have your books. Do you have them like available for purchase?
Yeah. Amazon. If you go to that same page, mikeup.com, you can click on books. And also there's a big banner with my newest one that just came out, Ardor, which I'm definitely more interested in selling just because it's the latest one. And it's about a child who's like psychic and doesn't want to be psychic, and he happens to be psychic, and he keeps trying not to be psychic, and he can't stop himself. And it goes from there. He grows up. So, yeah.
That sounds so exciting. We'll definitely check that out. And if you want to check out more of the show, be sure to like and subscribe. You can find us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Lost in the Groove Pod. With that, catch you on the next one. Stay groovy, my friends. Bye, everybody.